this laptop with a governmental trojan. Trojan which we detect as R2D2 because the actual network transmissions from the infected laptop sent back to the government are initiated with this passphrase which is C3PO, R2D2, POE. These are all references to Star Wars, the movie. Should antivirus and security companies like us try to detect governmental trojans? These are being used by different governments, police forces and investigators to catch bad people. I guess it isn't a bad thing if you get hit by a governmental trojan and you are a potential school shooter or a drug lord. But it is a bad thing if you get infected by a governmental trojan and you're innocent. And we are not the ones to make that call. We have to make the decision based on something else. And our decisions are made by technical merit. If it's a trojan, we will detect it regardless of the source. As easy as that. And I don't see any other way. If we would bow to, let's say, the government of Germany, or government of Canada, or government of the United States of America, then where do we draw the line? Next up we have the Italians asking us not to detect something, then the Spanish, then the Israelis, then the Syrians. Like, where do you draw the line? So we don't draw the line at all. If it's a Trojan, we detect it. As simple as that. Well, thank you. We actually did a public statement on this already 10 years ago, which still stands today. And this is how we do it. We have it written out on our website and we follow that rule. But this was the very first time we had to actually use it in the real world. This was the first governmental trojan we received, which we knew was a governmental trojan. It's highly likely that in our collection of malware, we have maybe several other trojans, which we just didn't know were governmental trojans. This particular sample, we wouldn't have thought twice that it's a governmental trojan. It's a backdoor. There's a keylogger, there's a screen grabber. The only really weird thing was that the way it was recording Skype was a bit weird. It wasn't just like intercepting mic and recording everything. It was just intercepting only Skype traffic, nothing else. And that was because of some weird legal requirement inside Germany, that you weren't allowed to record anything else than the voice over IP traffic. But I mean, we wouldn't have thought for a second that this would be a governmental trojan unless we would have known it. So it's likely we have other governmental trojans which we already detect, which we just don't know, are actually being used by police and others. Then what about espionage? Spying, this James Bond stuff. Well, information is spying or espionage is collecting information. That's what it is. 20 years ago, that meant breaking into buildings and stealing paper or taking copies or photographing them, making microfilms. No, if you wanted to reach the information, you had to physically go where that information was, because it was on paper, right? Today, obviously, it's data. It's on computers, it's on computer networks, which means that it is, at least in theory, everything is reachable from anywhere in the world. And there's been a massive revolution on how espionage is being done. Both industrial espionage and especially country-to-country, nation-state espionage. Countries are spying each other with online attacks all the time. We saw first attacks like this in 2005. We know now that they had been going on for maybe 2 years before that already. So these have been going on for maybe 8 years now, something like that. So what are we talking about? We're talking about cases where typically you get an email from someone you know and trust, like a colleague, a customer, sending you an email talking about normal things with an attachment, which is a document file. Along the lines of, "Hi Bob, it's me Jag. Regarding the meeting we had last week, here's the agenda for the next meeting. Take a look. Bye-bye." And Jag knows Bob. And there was a meeting last week. And the attachment is a PDF file, or a Word document, or an Excel chart, or a PowerPoint presentation. And then when you open it, you actually get a document on your screen, but by that time you're already owned. You're owned because there's an exploit inside the file. So let's have a look at some of the emails we've seen in these attacks. And these are, I think the thing to take home from here is that these emails look fairly normal. To whom it may concern, somebody sends a PDF file about the competitiveness report 2011. That's a real person, a real person's name, a real email address, but it's all spoofed and fake. It's not actually coming from him. It's not actually coming from the email address that it seems to be coming from. And you all know how easy it is to spoof SMTP, just like that. Another one with a PDF and a Word document attachment with pretty real-looking content and signatures and all that. Another one sending an invitation to a conference. Another one talking about nuclear challenges in this century. Another one sent by somebody who's a principal at a company. Again, it's all fake and spoofed. Dear working group members, here's a report I promised to send. Best regards, Mr. Garrett. He didn't send it, but it looks real to the recipients. And this is a nice one, sent by First Lady Office at USA.com. Signed Michelle Obama, First Lady of the United States. She didn't send it. But the document, Join Forces with Us.doc, contains an exploit and a backdoor.
Nice.
So let's have a closer look. You get an email like this. You believe the email to be real. Why wouldn't you? And you click on the attachment. So let's click on the attachment. So here we go. We have a short clip showing what happens. We have an empty system which has Adobe Reader 8 installed, and we have a file called researchreport.pdf right over there, right? And that's a file used in a real attack in February. So let's open that file to Adobe Reader. And we just clicked on it. Now it's loading. It's loading. It's loading. Here we go. And here's Adobe Reader, and bam, it goes away. And it's still loading and loading. And here we go. Hey, here's the file. Everything looks great. Except if you look closer, you'll see that the file name is now book.pdf, not researchreport.pdf, which is what we opened. And if you go and take a look closer on your system, suddenly you have a file called a.exe at the root of drive C. And like I just told you, it was a blank system. Windows XP SP2 does not have a file called a.exe at the root of drive C by default. It just appeared there. So what happened here? Well, research reported PDF was booby-trapped. When we opened it, it crashed Adobe Reader. That's why Adobe Reader came to screen and went away. That's when it crashed. And when it crashed, well, it was crashed by an exploit targeting, a vulnerability, in this case, an older vulnerability regarding font handling in Adobe Reader, which, like most of these cases, the vulnerabilities they're using are not 0 days. In most cases, it's something you would actually block by just patching your systems. Patching Word, patching Excel, patching PDF Reader, and so on. And when it exploits PDF Reader, it, well, runs a piece of code which dumps 2 files from within the original file. So research reported PDF has 2 files embedded inside of it. One of them is this new PDF file, which in this case was called book.pdf. And the other file is a.exe, which is a backdoor. So it drops these to the hard drive and then it opens them both. The reason why this book.pdf is carried along at all is just for misdirection. The user clicks on the PDF file, he expects to get a PDF file on his screen. The mistake they made here was that the file names didn't match. If the file they dropped would have been called research report.pdf, everything would have looked fine. So they were a bit sloppy here, but that happens. And the a.exe is a backdoor. In this case, Poison Ivy or Ghost Rat or any of these typical backdoors that we see in various kinds of attacks, but also in these targeted attacks, which connects to an outside server, and the initiation, of course, comes from the machine, so it can gain access to the firewalls. In many cases, it connects to a server at port 80 or port 443, hoping that it can get through the firewall. It typically does. And whoever is sitting at the target address now has full access to the computer, which got infected, plus to all the network shares that this user can access in the local area network. And now we can all think for a moment what we can access in our organization's local area networks. What a bit. So, let's have a look at the different documents We saw examples of the emails, they look convincing. What about the documents themselves? And this actually is interesting because it tells us quite a bit about the targets. If we just look at the files that have been used. So here's an example. That's a PDF file sent to a defense contractor, some technical specs about high efficiency DC-DC converter. Looks pretty normal. That looks like a real file. To the recipient, it's probably highly relevant and all that, right? But it's fake. It has a backdoor and an exploit. By the time you see this on your screen, you're already owned. Here's another one. This was sent to EU Parliament members or people working at the EU Parliament. Talks about EU topics. Looks fairly real. It isn't. Another one, federal tax law changes. That's a PDF file as well. Another PDF file talking about World Bank things. Looks pretty real to me. Here's another one. That's a Word document, so that's not a PDF file. Most of these are now, by now, around 60% are PDF files, targeting Adobe Reader only. If you open it with another reader, you're fine. But there you go. This talks about some UNICEF meetings. It's a Word file, like I said. That's an Excel file. Has a listing of people working apparently with defense things, defense administration, their phone numbers. Looks like a real file. It isn't. Contains a backdoor, contains an exploit. Another one, list of different journalists. Why? Beats me. We don't know who was targeted by this attack. Maybe somebody to whom this would be relevant. Some secretariat stuff from France, Department of the Air Force. I wonder who was the target. I don't know. Here's a PowerPoint file. So it's a slide set about visiting some organization. Probably fairly convincing to whoever received it in email. Operations in Afghanistan. I wonder who was targeted by these. I have no clue. Yada yada, yada yada. Well, this was interesting. This was an invitation to a conference which was last June, and we actually intercepted this in, I think, April, like 2 months before this. And it's a strategic and tactical missile systems conference, and if you actually look closer at who's the target group for the conference, well, it's actually a classified secret. So who would be receiving an email with an attachment like this, and to him it would be perfectly normal and like business as usual? I don't know, beats me. Here's another one. This is invitation to an ISSA meeting in North Alabama. When I was discussing this particular file somewhere, somebody just pointed out to me that this is also, well, basically most of the members in this organization work with computer security inside NASA, which might have something to do with it, but I don't know. And on and on. And of course we get these not just in English, but in all the languages. And not all of them are like business kind of content, like most of the stuff we've seen here. We also get all kinds of stuff, like, you know, we intercepted this yesterday. I don't know who is she. If anybody knows, let me know. This one intercepted 3 days ago. I don't know who was the target, but that's the file that he received, and it contained an exploit and a backdoor. By the time you have it on your screen, you already have a backdoor in your systems. And of course, like I said, all these different languages. So that's a Chinese PowerPoint file, contains a backdoor. This is Russian PDF file, contains a backdoor. This is German Excel file, contains a backdoor. This is German PDF file, contains a backdoor. This is Arabic. I don't read Arabic, but I'm guessing it's convincing as well. And so on. So what happened at RSA then? Well, RSA was hacked in, when was it? Late February, early March, something like that. What we believe happened was that somebody wanted to gain access, not to RSA, but to Lockheed Martin. And they failed because Lockheed Martin was using RSA Secure ID tokens for their network access. So since the attacker failed in getting inside, then they tried hacking Secure ID. And this is why RSA was hacked. We don't know all the details of the story, but RSA made an announcement then in spring that they were breached, and they were breached with a highly advanced and a targeted attack. They never made the actual backdoor available to the research community, and they never released the email that they were hit with. But we had one guy in our labs who was just wouldn't let this go. He would go back every other week and search through our sample collections, convinced that we have this sample somewhere in our system, we just don't know which one it is. And then he eventually wrote this system which was going through our sample collection of tens of millions of samples, went through all the OLE files we have, exports all the Flash components, and tries to find a specific exploit from the Flash component, because we knew what exploit was being targeted. And after basically half a year, he found the sample. And we have it right now. This is the email. This is the highly advanced targeted attack that burned RSA. I forward this file to you for review. Please open and view it.
Fucking kidding me.
We actually have a video clip here that's played, shows what happens when you open it up. It actually freezes for quite a while. It's doing heat spray with JavaScript. It takes a while. But when it finally wakes up from this part, it actually opens up a file on your... Well, actually, this one even fails in opening up a file on your screen. So if you click on that PDF file, nothing happens. You'll never get a file on your screen, but you have a backdoor on your system. Let me see if my clip is actually playing or not. No, it's not. Here we go. And excuse me, it wasn't a PDF file, it's an Excel file with an Excel exploit. Once again, the exploit they're using is not a zero-day. No, for this one it was. I stand corrected. This was a Flash exploit inside an Excel, which was zero-day at the time when they got burned. So the mistake that happened inside RSA was not really about patching, because they could not have patch policy. Why did they have Flash embedding enabled inside Excel? Beats me. It's not enabled by default. Maybe they had some internal system which required it. But you can see how Outlook is now like trying to load the file and it just fails in actually getting anything on the screen. And I think that's pretty much... When it finally then opens up the file, the Excel file has no content. It's an empty file. But by this time, there's already a backdoor on the hard drive. It's already executing in the background. So that's the highly advanced attack that hit RSA. Who was attacking them? We don't know.